They should have kept Buckner. Yeah. Because
Yes.
the thing about Buckner,
Yes.
he was the leader of the team. If you were in that locker room, he was the leader of the team. He preceded Jimmy and Juszczyk and Kittle. He was from the previous regime, and he experienced the most losing, and he was the most unaffected by it. He had treated his job like he was a freaking senator. It was the Niners didn't value it.
Well, okay, let's talk about this for a second. There are things that you can do as a player that send messages. If you're a baseball player, for example, and you're headed towards free agency, and you have Scott Boras as your agent, that sends a message to baseball front offices. And the same way Scott Boras sends a loud message to baseball front offices, Joel Siegel sends a loud message to NFL front offices, and that's Buckner's agent, and that was Khalil Mack's agent, and Mack had just done this whole song and dance and demanded top dollar, and Lynch wanted to avoid it, and he had a guy that he really liked in Armstead, and he said, you know what, Eric, if we can get you on a team-friendly deal, we'll move off of Buckner. I would have kept both because, to me, there's one rule that I would never break, and the rule is this: you do not ever trade anybody in the front seven that commands a double team. If you command a double team in the front seven, you're not being traded. Buckner consistently commanded double teams, and they traded him. And it was a total cap reason. But I kind of blame Buckner because if you really want to be a Niner, then after you get Joel Siegel as your agent, you go to John Lynch and say, hey, man, I really want to be here. Instead, you're sending a message saying, I'm going for the top dollar. And then John's got to make a call based on what he sees.
Everyone goes for the top dollar. And he had more leverage than Eric Armstead because Eric Armstead had one good year. Buckner had a great career. Why should he give the Niners a discount? I don't think that was his prerogative at all.
If he wanted to stay on a team that was loaded. I mean, how many times has DeForest gone to the playoffs since he left?
I mean, how many Super Bowls have the Niners won since he left? I don't think.
I hear you, but I mean, do you want to be on a great team with incredible talent?
I would have done the same exact thing that DeForest. I would have done the same fucking thing that DeForest Buckner did. And what the Niners did was they got an inferior player in Armstead for just a little bit cheaper. I mean, next year he's going to be his cap number's higher than Buckner. Going forward, his cap number's higher than Buckner. So what they got was a guy who agreed to a backloaded deal as opposed to a front-loaded deal. Okay, well, the Niners should have won a Super Bowl then, so they could keep Jimmy Ward and all that shit.
See, we're looking at a 2020 hindsight after they gaffed the first-round draft choice. They got a top 15 pick.
That's true. They could have got
right. I mean, if Kinlaw
could have got a Pro Bowler.
If who was drafted in and around Kinlaw that was better? If they had gotten somebody in and around Kinlaw who was significantly better, maybe we would be talking differently.
That's a good point. Alex Georgiou says, Jaquaski Tart said Niners practice makes players banged up versus Eagles who take care of their players. A player saying what we think about Shanny. That's very interesting. That's very interesting.
Is it sour grapes?
You always got to
filter everybody.
It could be, but I mean, I think it's naive to think that these players don't have their own thoughts about why the Niners are consistently so banged up. They'll never express those thoughts while they're under contract for the 49ers, and maybe their thoughts aren't right, but I'm sure these guys have firsthand knowledge, and I wouldn't necessarily dismiss it. But you're right, it could be sour grapes.
No, I'm not dismissing it. I'm just saying,
hard to know.
It's hard to know. And what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about Thursday practices versus other teams' Thursday practices? Are we talking about, number? Because it also comes down to a practice is not a practice. Some teams have 60 plays in a practice. Some teams have 100 plays in a practice. It's like, what are we talking about really at the end of the day? I don't know that we have the full picture on that.
No, but I think Jaquaski Tart probably does, and I'd be interested to know a little bit more from him on this subject. Yeah. Does anyone know if Wilson requested wanted to go? I don't know. I imagine John Lynch probably said so in a conference call a few minutes ago, so find out. Wayne Evett, thank you. Jason, CMC for Quinn, Hawkinson, and William Jackson. We could have had 3 players for those picks plus 2 fourths and a 2020 fifth round back. Did we make the right move? You know how I feel about it. That's an interesting way to look at it. But I got to say that here's the thing. With the Niners gave up too much for Christian McCaffrey. There's one person who can justify this trade and make it work. Kyle. And he's in control of getting the ball to Christian McCaffrey. And we saw what he did last week. So he's going to be working very hard to justify this trade because it's his reputation on the line. That's one way to feel confident about it, right? It's not like you got a coach who's going to bury him.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see on this one. Let me just say on the last thing. I mean, Quinn's a free agent at the end of the year. They have a ton of defensive ends. I think their real problem up front is at tackle. Hawkinson would have been nice, but he's your second tight end. And the
Also got
third
Dwelly,
guy,
who's just amazing.
who had a great catch last week. And then the third guy that they had there was who again?
Hold on.
It was William Jackson. And William Jackson got moved today, but William Jackson's got a bad hamstring. And I don't think the 49ers talked to Washington, but I don't think they were willing to move a pick because, I think he went for the exchange of a 6th for a 7th. So it was a very low price that the Steelers paid for him. I don't think he's healthy. And I don't think they wanted to trade a pick of any kind for a guy who wasn't healthy. I think if he had been cut loose, they would have been all over William Jackson. Big corner, could play man to man. But now he's got a bad hammy.
Beyond reasons, ENT says it seems like all our premium players have been figured out or injured due to Banana Hand's mediocre play calling. Mike McDaniel, hey, big head, text sent. Yeah, it is. It does seem kind of disheartening. Debo, great contract year, gets the bag, can't replicate it. Kittle's been that way. Warner's been that way. Although they're still good. I'm just saying they haven't been able to replicate their best season. Something for the Niners to think about. They got more guys coming up like that. Although Bosa's been pretty consistent. It's not like he's had one good year.